I'm going to be going over Lor-Meta's weekly meta report, which will tell us the metagame breakdown, what decks we should be playing for ladder to get that sweet LP, and what they look like. The article and deck codes are in the description. Let's just take a look at play rate real quick. Ezreal, Seraphine, Noxus, still number 1, 14%. Victor, Seraphine, Ionia, hasn't really changed much, despite having a very high power score and meta score last week. That Ekram's kind of come out of nowhere. I really don't know why. Yeah, it's 4.6% of the metagame. Big gains. Vanya Jax, Janny, Rumble Vayne. These are all things we went over last week. Victor Seraphine SI, another Zed deck, kind of surprising. And 2 Pantheon decks, one with Vayne, one with Varus. So now let's go down into the power score, and we're going to see what the big winner is for LP grinding. And the big winner for this week in terms of power score is Victor Seraphine Ionia. Last week we had a bit of a three-way tie essentially. This week it pulls ahead, and a power score is basically a deck's score or rating based off its win rates against all the other decks in the metagame by the play rate of the decks. So that's why sometimes power scores and meta scores can be different, whereas meta scores only look at top 10 decks. And Victor Seraphine, this list had 1 karma. This was kind of like the sweet spot between highest win rate and highest play rate I could find. Basically, this is a big splattering of built over card advantage, built over interaction, along with Ionian tricks to just keep your champions alive and eventually bury the opponent card advantage. Looking at Vayne Jax with its 87 power score, this is just, you know, a good old fashioned Demacia beatdown deck essentially, right? It's pretty honest. It plays units, it plays equipment, and it has a splattering of, we got Zed Vayne at 81. This is just pretty much an aggressive Zed Vayne deck, but it actually kind of goes a little slower. It's more about using combat tricks to make sure its champions don't die, and then being kind of its tricky abilities to win the day, or sometimes you just push a ton of damage with Ringblade Duo and rallies. Janati, not far behind, 79 power score. This is essentially a aggressive deck that has a lot of skills in it, which works with Annie and Jhin. And now we have moved back to Decimates. I don't know if there was like a weird data blip, but last week they were playing Sigil of Malice, which is Kaka. Play Decimates. Ezreal, Seraphine, Noxus, even though its power score isn't particularly high, it has a really nice meta score. That means it's very good at beating up other popular decks, and probably also good for ladder or other tournament, you know, playing those. And I'm sure you've seen the ton of this. This is essentially the built over card advantage interaction pile, but essentially just splashing for Noxus removal to shore up some of the weaknesses, mainly Disintegrate and Scorched Earth when you deal with big units. And they also are a little bit cheaper than some of the other options, say in Shadow Isles, so it helps Ezreal turbo level and meme out wins easier when you need. Pantheon Vayne's at 75, a really bad meta score, kind of not great. This is more or less essentially a traditional Pantheon deck. We got some faded stuff, we have some targeting, we got a reasonable amount of tricks. We don't really card really anything here. I don't know. Basically, they cut Fear, they put in Vayne. I really don't say. Like, it doesn't even play that much equipment compared to some decks. Victor, Seraphine, Shadow Isles with Quietus. Low meta score, pretty reasonable power score though. One thing that's kind of interesting about this, again, it follows a very similar template compared to the Seraphine Ezreal decks and the other Ionia version of this, but the highest win rate version of this plays 3 Quietus. That's I found on here, so that's pretty sweet, and I could love to see it. Pantheon Varus sitting down at 54. This is kind of where like the big jump down in power score comes from. And this is just like a kooky kind of spin on Pantheon. I'd say it's probably slightly more of a Varus deck, just because it has so many cultist cards, but there's a lot of synergy between them and Pantheons. They both want the same thing. You play a lot of spells on your things. The Unforgiving Cold, good card. Play 3 of those if you play this, and card's broken. Alright, Rumble Vayne at 54. It's got such a bad meta score. This deck, like, was pretty good at the beginning of the season, it felt like, and then it's kind of come crashing down to earth. I kind of wouldn't recommend this just because I think there are so many good Vayne decks. Like, you don't want to tie it up with Rumble. But, you know, if you want to, if you like rallying people and just going Voltron very tall and smashing them, you could play. And lastly, Zed Hecarim kind of weaseled in down at a power score of 42. Very low meta score. I don't know why this deck is here. I really don't. But, you know, this is essentially a farm roll beatdown. Yeah, it's kind of cool. We got Dragon Ambush for extra attackers, which will trigger Dark Chariot, since Dragon Lings are ephemeral. Field Musician, Moonlit Glenkeeper, new card, kind of helps give this deck a bit of a power boost. But you look at the matchups, this doesn't really farm any of the popular decks either, so it's just... This is like, hey, you made it, you know, you're... Someone had to get in here, and it's easy at Heckroom. So yeah, that's the end of this meta report. There should be some cards up if you want to watch some other goodness, and I'll see you next time. Bye.